Hi everybody, Mark Tinkey here. I'm coming to you from my studio, as you can see, but we're not doing a tour. Today we're doing a behind the scenes look at the creation of the Gwen and Zee swimsuit dolls that are coming out, or came out. I don't know when this video is showing. So anyway, they're coming or they're here, either way. So I had the idea to do this. I called Robert, asked him if he was cool with it. He was. I asked Rachel if she would be interested in a video like this. She was. So here we are. So if you don't know, I work as a sample maker for Robert Tonner, which means that I create the patterns and the initial garment from his designs that goes to the factory for production. It's very simple, but it's a lot of stuff that happens between me getting a sketch from Robert and me sending him the finished sample and pattern. But speaking of sketches, most 99.999% of the time starts with a sketch. So for these gals, this is what I got. So that's a pretty cool email to get from Robert Tonner, right? It's like, I want to make these dolls. And so I love it. I love the 60s. I think it's, as far as a decade for fashion, I think it's a really interesting decade. And I love this sort of mid-60s Annette Funicello beach movie vibe that they're giving. If you don't know those movies, go watch them, or go watch Beach Blanket Bingo or one of them. And they're silly and fun and super campy. But anyway, that's the look that reminds me of. I also think of Shelley Fabre from the Donna Reed show and, all that stuff. It's like, that's kind of the vibe that it's giving. So that's what I get. I get a sketch, and then it's up to me to then turn that sketch into a garment. So I think we're going to switch the camera around, and I think it'll be easier for you to see the next steps and for me to show you what happens if I have this camera switched around. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm here on my cutting table, and when I'm starting something new, and I didn't have a ton of patterns that I had made for Elowen, so I have to start with a sloper. And a sloper is a very basic pattern. It's basically the most basic, I'm going to say basic so many times, garment that you can think of. It's just very simple, very plain, and close fitting. So from this pattern that I created, that's a whole other process of drafting that pattern to get to here. And that's for another video. Otherwise this will be 7 hours long. So this pattern creates this bodice. So let's put that on a doll, and I have some headless and handless sewing bodies that I use as my sewing mannequins. So there she is. So you can see it's just a close fitting, simple bodice, and you could make a dress from that, just simple. Now I have slopers for skirts. I have one that is a torso sloper, it's called, so there'd be no waist seam, and that would be more for drafting coats, jackets, dresses, that kind of thing. But since I need to do this top, I start with this simple sloper for just the bodice. And then what I'll do is I'll make this little garment, and then we will pin her in the back. Sometimes, not all the time, but usually I pin it just so I can get the right fit here. And then you're like, okay, well, that's nothing like a swimsuit. And you're right, it's not. So I like to use these disappearing ink pens. They stay on fabric until you hit them with steam, and then they disappear. So once I have the sloper, then I will draw style lines. If you've ever seen Project Runway and they would run that black tape on the dress forms and, with lines and stuff, that's what they were doing. They were creating their style lines to create their patterns. But since I don't have a soft dress form for Elowen, it's just easier to be more accurate if you do it right on the doll. This is how I do it. So I'll look at the sketch and I'll see, okay, it kind of dips. It's a little bit of a sweetheart. And then, okay, it goes under the bust. So we're going to maybe draw it there. And then you want to try and stay straight all the way around, which I may or may not for this demonstration, but I'm going to try to kind of, and you'll sort of see like where it wants to go, if that makes sense, where the lines want to go, where, you don't want to I don't want it to be super thin in the back. I don't want it to be super wide either. It's all to make it look like a sketch. So we'll get that. And then often what I'll do is I will also just divide this in half and just work on one side. to keep it symmetrical. Now what I'll have to do when you, well, you'll see. So then I'll take scissors, and yes, I use these giant ones, and then I start cutting away what I'm not using. So this is not going to be, there we go. Anyway, so I'll cut that away. Obviously that's not there. We come down here. So we're just trimming along my style lines. And this is how I do it. This is by no means hard and fast rules of pattern making. Robert once told me I make patterns in a way like he's never seen before. But he said, but the end result is good. So, but I sort of do this combination of drafting and draping, and it's because I'm largely self-taught. I did learn a lot from Robert, but anyway, so we have that. So then you can see though, like, see how gappy that is? Like you're not going to get the right fit. So then I have to go in and I'll sort of pinch that. You'll see where the excess is. You'll feel it rather. And then I go in and I pin that. So then that I've created like another little dart. And now you can see it's laying flatter, right? Well, now what do you do? Because now you have another dart. So, all right, we'll be right back. So that's sort of what I get. Now that is super messy and not what the finished thing is going to be, but it gives me an idea, right? Because there's several processes. So I will either take the stitches out of that dart, or most often what I'll do is just snip it. Now, when you lay it flat again, that dart is going to open up more than it was before because it's compensating for where I pinned this dart, this new dart. So I have that. Then I will take this, trace this onto paper, create a new pattern, cut that out of fabric, and try that on the doll. So that's just for the first go round. Now I can see right now that this is a weird line there, how it goes. So I would go in and kind of flatten that. All right, I'm gonna pull out my finished pattern to show you a little bit more what I'm talking about. So after I have created this initial, oh wait, that's not it. That's the part that I didn't need. So then I would also trim this, and then I would also cut where the side seam is and just cut it apart because I have to trace this and put it on fabric and redo it all anyway. But so I'll get a piece like that. And you can see it's starting to take the shape of what the finished pattern ends up being, right? And so I'm sort of close there. Obviously, I'm not doing this exactly. I'm doing this months after I did the original. So it's not quite the same, but it's pretty daggone close. So what I'll do is I will trace this piece onto a plain piece of paper. I'll add my seam allowances, and then I'll cut that out of the paper again, cut it out of fabric, sew it, try that on the doll. And I'll just continue that process until I have a muslin that fits. And that is the thing, I'll work in just plain muslin until I have a fit that I am happy with. There's a couple purposes for that. Muslin is cheap, number one. It comes in multiple weights, and also it's plain, so I can draw lines on it when I need to see what's going on. If I was working in gingham from the beginning, it would get confusing to see lines, and then you're looking at the print and everything. So the print doesn't come in until I think I have the pattern exactly where I want it. So that is the next phase. And I told you I had slopers for, other things as well. If I want to do the sloper for, as you can see, the built-in sort of panty that's on the swimsuit, I start with my skirt sloper, or I might start with a pants sloper because I need it to go between the legs. So I might start with these and from that do that same process that I did with the bodice, creating this yoke and that goes at the top, and then the sort of under part, the little panty part, all from starting with a pants sloper. Now I won't cut the full length of the pants because I know I'm going to cut it mostly off, so I'll just do a little short, thing like that. But that's what I do for each piece of the garment. And to figure out the pleating, that's a whole other thing. You just sort of play around with the length of the skirt, the width of the skirt, and then the pleating and how deep the pleats are. So then this is an example of my paper pattern for what I would do showing the pleats. But this is again like after I have figured that out in the muslin, marked it, with my pens, tried a couple different thicknesses of pleats, see what works. That is a whole process. But that is in a nutshell how each component is created. So that process goes on and on and on, back and forth until I have a fit that I like, and I end up with a finished muslin. You can see I have all the pencil marks on this one. And this is, now I actually have not seen the finished dolls in person yet. So I saw a sample, but I didn't like get to play with it or anything. So I don't know, or like a production sample, not like this kind of sample, but a production sample. But I haven't held one yet. I don't know. Maybe by the time this airs, I will have been able to play with one. But so this is what I came up, with when I had my finished muslin that I was happy with. I had this little tuck here. Like, I'm not sure if that stayed. But anyway, this is my finished muslin that I was happy with the fit, right? And then here in this stage, there might be, once I have all of the components in there and all of the darts and the lining, I might have to increase, something around the waistline because it's maybe not fitting right. So you're constantly sewing and redoing and making alterations and redoing and resewing and adjusting the pattern. And it is a really time-consuming process because there's no other way to get it right than to just keep doing it. After I get a muslin to where I feel like, yep, this is as close as I think I can get it to the sketch. I'm happy with the fit. I'm happy with the proportions. This is the stage then now where I will go and cut out all the patterns in the fabric. Now the fabric often, is not what it ends up being in the final doll. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the factories can find exactly what Robert was able to find or what I was able to find. He will tell me sometimes what he's looking for, and I can go shopping for it as well and, send him pictures of stuff. Hey, I found this. What do you think of that? But then, it's always ends up what the factory can find. So sometimes things can change. So the gingham that I initially found for these was larger. The production it's smaller. It's more in scale to the dolls. So it's actually really cute. And sometimes you end up with something better than what you were able to send or find. So anyway, so that's what it looks like. Just plain old muslin with all my pen marks and pencil marks but you can see that's another reason to do it in muslin, because you can make all these marks and you can sometimes I make little notes, and if I have to cut it apart again and trace it again, then I'll know, I wanted to add an 1/8 of an inch over here or whatever. So, but that is the process to creating it and getting to the point where you're cutting it out of fabric and making it in what I call the pretty stuff, the fun stuff that everybody wants to start with right away. I don't get to do that. But when I do, it's super fun. So I don't have my finished sample for this, obviously, because I sent that to Robert, who sent it to China. So I'll just explain to you what happens after that. So once I do it in fabric, in the what I deem as the production fabric, or what Robert has determined, this is what it's gonna be done in to be finished, and I make that, I might have to do another round of alterations because that fabric weight might be different from the muslin. So you might have to do another, I might have to make it in the quote unquote real fabric a couple times too, after I have gone through all the iterations of the muslin. So again, it's really, it always hurts me a little when people call them basics, because there's nothing basic about the process. It's the same whether it's a bathing suit or an evening gown. You're going through the same process to get the dolls looking how you want them to look. But after the pattern is done and I'm happy with it, Robert's happy with it, how it looks, I will take every pattern piece that I've created and trace it out very cleanly on a piece of copy paper. Now this used to be where my part ended. And I would trace it out on copy paper. I would label everything. I would label seam allowances, grain lines, darts, how many you cut of each one, what the piece of it is, all of those kind of things. But that wasn't where it ended. Robert would then digitize these. They'd have to be digitized and converted to a vector document in Adobe Illustrator. So I recently learned how to do that. Robert taught me how to do that. So I'll show you a little bit of that process. Okay, you can kind of see on my screen here, it's a little bit difficult to show a computer screen, but anyway, so I have the file downloaded in Adobe Illustrator, and then I have to go through and trace every pattern piece in Adobe Illustrator, which if you've ever used it, you know it's not as simple as just tracing something with a pen, or like even with your, with if you had a computerized tablet or whatever. You have to hit every point, and then you curve the lines, and it's crazy. It was when Robert was teaching me how to do it, I was like, okay, this is wild. It made sense after a minute, but it has a learning curve. So anyway, I have to go through every pattern piece, trace that. You can see my original scanned pattern underneath it, and then this is the one that's traced in Illustrator. Let me actually deselect that so you can sort of see it without the... And then I will add the seam allowances in there as well. I will label it, I'll add the grain line, and then you can see I have this other separate little document, or not document, but piece. And then I put that onto a new page that has the grid showing, because when the pattern is sent to the factories, they need to know for scaling, what is this? What size is this compared to an inch or whatever? I do an inch grid and show it that way. So I will go through every pattern piece and do that for each one individually. And there's no shortcut to it. So it takes a minute, but it's actually, I'm actually enjoying it now. So it's kind of a fun added skill that I learned from Robert. So there you go. That is a look at the process and what it takes to get a doll produced. This is the very, very first stages of something. That's not anything to do with what Robert does with dealing with the factories, and when he sends my samples to the factory and the digitized patterns to the factory, and then they have to create either die cuts or laser cutting. That's a whole other thing. So I just hope it gives, I know everybody here has an appreciation for dolls, because that's why you're watching these videos and that's why you are supporting VDC, but I do hope that this shows what goes into it and the love and care that goes into it from the very start. Because I love dolls too, and I care about them, and I care about these characters, and it's not just a job or, whatever for me. I really do care about it, and it's exciting when something I worked on is getting released, because I didn't even talk about time frame. So I started working on these dolls last May. It was last May. It was May of 2024. Just to give you an idea of the scope. So I worked on some other, there's a bunch of other patterns and other dolls coming. There's actually all the patterns for all of the other Gwen and Z's are right there. I could show you, but I couldn't, because then Robert would get mad. But, so I was working on several dolls, but yeah, it started in May. So just so you know, it's not a quick turnaround, and that can take longer or a shorter amount of time depending on so many things. Are they able to find suitable fabric? All kind of stuff. What about the accessories? Does it have a purse? Does it have jewelry? Does it have, whatever, the shoes? So all of those things the face paint or the makeup, all of that can make it a longer process or a shorter process. So yeah, I'm excited to share all of that with you and to show you all what goes into it, and a little bit into my world that's just beyond the look at my pretty dolls and my cool studio, but what I do in here. So yeah, I hope if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll look at them, and if there's enough of the same kind of questions, maybe we could do a follow-up video. I don't know, let Rachel know if you like this kind of video, if you'd like to see more behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, and I think that's about it. I'm so excited for these characters and these dolls. They're very important people in Elowen's family history and in her family tree, and Gwen and Zee were friends, but Elowen and Nemo are kind of, they got off to a rocky start, so we're not quite sure what that relationship is yet. And I don't know if they know that their relatives were friends, or I don't know if any of that connection's been made. So there's so many fun story elements there. I love that Elowen is going to be able to she'll be able to, steal from this vintage closet that she's going to have open up to her now, which ties into, the original Elowen, for collectors who have been there since the beginning, where there's the poem in the poem book about she lives upon the earthquake line in her painted house divine with treasures. What was it? With treasures that her grandma wore, and also from the the thrift store. I don't remember the poem exactly, but you should go find that poem book and read it. But it's really fun. So I think it's cool because, it ties into Elowen's love of vintage things, of going to thrift stores and finding old things, of going up into her attic and finding things. So there's a whole kind of storyline there and that can develop. And I'm so excited to see where Gwen and Zee go, where their stories go as separate characters, but in the Elowen universe, but not in the same time frame. I think it's so cool. I'm so excited about it. I'm really, really excited about these dolls. I can't wait to get them. And I'm sure you are all just as excited as I am for them. I hope you are, because I really think they're very special. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Robert. And I think that's it. I think I'm going to just sign off from there. Leave your questions and I'll answer them if I can. And if there's a bunch, maybe the better thing would be to just do another video. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, happy collecting. Take care, everybody. Bye.